You said that emotion, by definition, is flowing.
Yes, it's the energy flowing. It has to be
Yes,
flowing.
it
It
has
can't
to
be
be
just
flowing.
bound up.
Yes.
Yes.
So, first question, what happens when it's bound up?
When it's bound up, it's an expression of the soul's will to bind up its own emotion, or deny it, or suppress it, or resist it. Now, once we start doing that with the exercise of our will, which is actually an emotion in
I was
itself.
going to say, which in itself is an emotion,
Correct.
isn't it? Yeah.
So it's an emotional reason why we are suppressing or denying or resisting.
And that willful use, that willful stop of flow is done through another emotional flow.
Correct. There's always a reason
Yeah.
why we do it. There's always a choice. And usually when we stop the flow of emotion, there's only two primary reasons. One is that we're afraid of expressing it. And the second one is that we feel it needs to be suppressed for some reason, you know, and usually because we're worried about becoming out of control and worried about hurting somebody or something like that. In other words, it's an emotion that is going to probably be negatively expressed, and we're worried about the extent of its negative expression.
Yeah.
That's usually the only reason why we shut down the expression of emotion.
Yeah.
The rest of the time we're pretty open to the expression of emotion, and most people on the planet are fairly open to expression of certain types of emotion.
Yes.
So, for example, sexually based emotions, which are energy flows that are sexual in nature, most people on the planet are pretty open to the flow of those particular emotions, whereas other types of flows, it just depends on what's happened to you in the past as to what usually is the reason why you shut down the flow of certain kinds of energy coming from your soul. So once this emotion has, so you could say this emotion is like a build-up of a feeling or energy inside of you, and it's not going to flow, it's not going to become emotion until you allow it. If you suppress it, what it does to your soul is quite damaging. There's a whole heap of pathways inside of your soul, energy-based pathways, that begin being shut down. It's a bit like, if you can liken the soul to a brain, which it has some similarities in some ways in terms of its complexity. It's far more complex than the brain. Yeah. But if you shut down certain pathways inside of your brain, you now no longer have the ability to transmit that particular information. Yeah. So for example, if somebody has a stroke, for example, they shut down a certain pathway in their brain that doesn't allow them anymore to express information that's still in their soul, but it no longer can be expressed outwards. And it's a similar principle with regard to how the soul works with emotion. If you begin to suppress or shut down your emotion, in other words, shut down the energy so that it doesn't flow, it starts blocking up all of these different pathways. So you become more and more desensitized. And actually what happens if you could observe the soul, which you can do once you get to the 36th dimension of the spirit world, it starts to shrivel. It's like energy is being taken away from the soul itself. It can't express its energy, and it starts to actually shrivel and looks like it's dying. And if you can imagine it like an apple, for example, or some kind of piece of fruit, sitting out in the open and slowly decomposing without there being any moisture. And what happens is eventually all the moisture disappears from the apple and it just shrivels up and becomes a dried apple. Yeah. And that's what happens to the soul, like becomes a dried up soul. It still has the capacity to reverse this issue, but unfortunately a lot of people don't reverse that for many, many years after they pass into the spirit world. So this energy, it's vital that people understand that this energy must flow in order for you to maintain good health. And that's good intellectual and emotional health in the end, because in the end your intellect is completely driven by the emotions or the suppression of the emotions. And for that reason, people who suppress their emotions often become quite disturbed. And in fact, you can become so suppressed in your own emotional experience that you allow other people to express their emotions through you, and that would be called psychosis, where you no longer wish to express your own emotions and feelings for whatever reasons, whatever fears you have, but you are completely open to the expression of others through you. And once you do that, you're opening yourself to all sorts of danger with regard to your mental health. And in fact, almost all these problems that are called mental health problems on the planet are all associated with the denial of specific emotions. So at some point in the future, we'll be having a whole series of FAQs about mental health, and we'll actually be pointing out the linkage between what kind of mental health issue a person faces and what type of emotion they are suppressing that created this mental health issue. So, but what we're basically saying is you start locking up this energy emotion and wow, you start causing all sorts of problems for yourself, but also lots of problems for other people, because other people generally have to now, they now don't have an easy way of determining what you feel. And so now communication is very difficult with you. They don't know what you feel, and unless you can express it verbally, they won't know what you're feeling. Because you're blocking off the expression of your emotion, the expression of the energy. The beauty of having a complete openness from an energy-based expression is that everyone around you knows exactly what's going on. And so it's actually a very loving thing to do as well for everyone around you. Of course, it's not loving for you to project a whole heap of unloving or damaging energy-based emotions where you're making decisions that are damaging other people. But at least everyone knows what you think and feel, even when you're doing that. So the worst potential place for you to be with your emotion is to actually lock it up.
Yeah.
And this is what we're taught to do, unfortunately, on the planet, quite from a very, very young age. But it's actually the worst thing you can do to your soul. You're better off expressing it, even if it's negatively, because at least some energy is flowing, and people can easily determine what's going on. Okay. Of course, the best option is to express your energy, positive, using a positive will in harmony with love, and then of course everybody around you will enjoy your company generally, and generally enjoy the expression of your personality that they observe.
So you're saying that the nature of the soul is emotional, which is this energy in motion, and it very negatively impacts upon every aspect of health when we shut down emotion.
Correct. When we shut down the energy, and it's just an energy stored now in the soul. So, for example, if you have an energy like a harmful energy and stored in your soul, so let's say you feel anger, which is an emotion, and you feel the emotion of anger, and you decide to suppress that and store that in your soul, now it's going to pervade every single decision you make. It's going to influence everything you do. It's going to determine how everybody around you responds, because it's not being expressed, it's not being released from you. If you express it, it's released. And once it's released, it no longer determines what's happening around you. And emotion stored, or energy stored within the soul, now creates attractions, because God is always attempting, firstly, to help you express that energy, and secondly, if it's a negative energy, to help you release it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So God's designed the soul and designed the universe and all of the laws that govern the soul in such a way that God wants you to feel emotion, and God is going to be bringing you events constantly to help you do such a thing, even if the emotion is negative. Because if the emotion is negative or positive, if you store it, it's going to damage you in some way. It needs an expression, it needs an outlet.
Yep. So when we suppress it, we're essentially trapping it within the soul, and that, regardless of whether that's a positive or negative emotion from what you're saying, that begins to damage us.
Correct. And it's a primary cause of disease. Particularly any negative emotion trapped within the soul that we don't allow the expression of, it's the only cause of all diseases and all accidents and all other things actually that happen to you, whether you're on earth or in the spirit world. And this is where people don't understand how much it affects their entire existence.
Yeah.